Welcome back to the Man Cave, everybody, for episode 79 of the ManTFup podcast. I'm Kimmy B.
And Lenny.
Before we go any further, please like, subscribe, share, and follow. We are absolutely everywhere. And get ready to either take mental notes or just start typing in the comments, because I'm sure there will be lots to say about what we're about to dive into. 2024, unfortunately, not giving us a whole lot of new stuff to work with, in the sense of, the same situations continue to rear their ugly heads.
Yes.
Parenting will always be something that we discuss on this show, whether it's how we were parented ourselves, how Lenny parents his kids, things we see on the internet, and that is where we're going with today's episode. I sent this to Len not that long ago. It popped up on my feed, and it was a trauma therapist who had posted a carousel on Instagram of different things she would love for parents to stop doing to their children, right? Or even with their families. It sounds like possibly even just in relation to the household and how they interact with the people.
Siblings, other parents. Yeah.
So on the very first slide, number 1 was yelling at your children as soon as you get home from work, right? Number 2 was giving the silent treatment to the entire room or family when you're upset.
Notorious from women.
Number 3 is waking your children up with aggression or loud noises. If I slide to the second page, we had treating siblings so differently that there is a clear favorite. Specifically, she said, when it comes to your sons, saying, I guess I'm just the worst mom then, when your kids shared that they're hurt. So passive aggressiveness, right? Refusing to apologize because you're the parent and you don't have to. We have expecting the whole household to walk on eggshells when you're in a bad mood. Not protecting your children from the other parent when they did something legitimately wrong or harmful. Depending on them for emotional support in the way you would with a partner. That feels like something that is very much in a single family or a single parent household.
Yeah, maybe.
Or if you're in an emotionally or physically abusive household, I feel like you could probably run into that one. Treating them unfairly because the world isn't fair. This doesn't actually prepare them for anything other than a potential lifetime of traumatization. Seeing your children as an extension of you, because they are so much more than this. Also believing they should be grateful because you feed and house them. She writes, this is your job. As a parent. We could go on and on. There's more. I think that's a good, there's a good amount.
That's a good start.
Right? Yeah.
We'll post the whole thing.
Yeah.
So everyone.
Because there's a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, she's got about 20 different things.
Yeah. I mean, what is there? 5 pages, 5 slides?
No, I think she might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
7
We'll post all 8 slides for you to read through before we.
Yeah. Let's go back to, can we start with page 1? Can we just kind of maybe go through it?
Yeah, no.
I obviously, as anybody who watches
one.
the podcast knows, I do not have children of my own. I usually speak when it comes to parenting of experiences of how I was raised. And then how I see my friends raising kids. And then Lenny obviously gives you his personal insight. Number 1, yelling at your children as soon as you get home from work.
Yeah, not a big fan of that.
Okay.
I mean, listen, yelling at your children because of what? Because they almost set the house on fire? Mm-hmm. Or, I mean...
They're legitimately acting up, or because you had a bad day.
Yeah.
And now you're coming home and you're...
Don't ever take your bad day out on your kids. But by the same token, if you walk in and trip over a skateboard and fall on your face, you might scream a little bit.
I was going to say, so my mom, you've now met my mother... Mm-hmm. The most even-keeled, low-key, like she's not a voice raiser. That's never been her MO. So she was not the one to yell. And even like my stepdad, my dad wasn't really around to raise me on like a day in and day out kind of basis. My stepdad was that guy though. Like he had things that really got on his nerves, right? Like if I dropped my backpack as soon as I came in the door, he wasn't going to trip over it, but like that was a thing for him, right? And so, there'd be a conversation, and he was from the Midwest. He had, a kind of a militant upbringing. So he just handled things very different than my mom. So yeah, I agree with you. I think there's things that kids do, and when you do something repeatedly, it gets frustrating. I think a parent might raise their voice on the 12th, backpack right in the middle of the hallway as soon as you walk in.
I've been more of a tone person than than a yelling person.
Yeah, he was the same way. It's like he had a presence,
Yes.
and he had a delivery that but it could make you feel very small. It could make you feel small.
Absolutely. The purpose
Yeah.
to
But-
change your behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, kids need their behavior changed, but don't come in yelling at your kids because
Taking your frustration.
Yeah, I mean, just looking for stuff to yell about.
Or if you and your partner are having issues, or
anything.
if you sat in traffic and it frustrated you, or Okay. Number 2, giving the silent treatment to the entire room or family when you're upset.
I think this goes more to women.
That's funny.
That's a woman's MO. That's a woman's MO.
No,
you have to say that's a woman's MO.
No, I mean.
Oh wow. See, now you're thinking about it.
No, because I have men in my life that's what they do. Like that, instead of addressing
ghosting you and giving you the silent treatment.
Lenny, don't be disrespectful. We're not talking about in a dating situation and ghosting. Those are two different things. I'm talking about when you don't want to have a conversation or you're frustrated and you don't know how to articulate your feelings, you become silent or quiet.
You're correct. You're correct. I'll give you men in this situation, but men in this situation, I don't think do it as a ploy. I think they do it because they just don't want to fucking go down that rabbit hole.
I get it. Okay, but at the same token, I think for children in particular, that can, if you don't understand that, it takes a long time to realize your dad wasn't ignoring you because he was mad at you. He didn't want to have an all-out,
blowout. He didn't want to lose his shit on
He didn't want to have to give a dissertation as to why, he hadn't returned a text message or whatever the case may be. And I think women, to your point, and I think that it depends on the person. I understand what you're saying, but I think that there are individuals, both male and female, that use communication as a punishment. Because they know if I'm not talking to you, if I turn my back on you, you know that I'm mad at you.
Yes.
Right? And it's an immaturity. So, and honestly, the worst part about that, aside from how it can make a child feel as a child, is that they tend to take that with them into adulthood.
Yeah, well, they take everything you do into adulthood.
I know, so I can understand why she says some of these things. So it's not healthy. Whether you want to go down the rabbit hole or not, at some point in time, you're going to have to.
Not healthy is, I mean, what is a healthy kid today? What is a healthy kid today? Tell me what an emotionally healthy kid looks like today. Tell me one child that doesn't have something that they're going to carry.
Have you seen some of these kids, though? Like, they're on the internet that can verbalize better than adults when somebody has hurt their... And it's not a crying, it's not a screaming, it's not a temper tantrum. They're just like, I didn't really like how that made me feel when you said that. And they're like 3, and you're like, I wish I had the emotional bandwidth and capacity.
This goes to one of the ones down the road.
To look
Get used to it, honey.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I think that you can teach your children how to communicate and not be soft, how to not be doormats, how to effectively, because the silent treatment doesn't help, honestly, anybody. All you're doing is internalizing whatever it is that you're frustrated about or whatever it is that you don't want to address with the other person.
Let me go to the other end of this.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a parent who was raised by a screamer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now they're a silent treatment parent. What's more traumatic? Should I scream at my kid or should I give them the silent treatment to retain my composure?
I think that, don't you think that as an adult, we should be able to sit there and tell somebody why you're disappointed in them? And again, whether it's a tone
that
or
comes
not.
After the silent treatment.
No, it does. You see how immature it sounds, though? I mean, it really sounds, and I understand, but I think you can explain, listen, I'm going to take a beat. I need a minute. Because if I address this with you right now,
I'm going to lose my shit.
I'm going to lose my shit. So I'll come back.
And what age are we talking about? I mean,
Sorry.
It could be more traumatic for a 3-year-old to get the silent treatment than a 15-year-old. So, I mean, what context are you using for a child? 1 to 3, 3 to 11, 12 to 18.
If you start at any point in time,
but there's kids have totally different perspectives at those ages.
They do, but I'm telling you right now, it's the same thing with baby talk. And I apologize for clearing my throat. That's disgusting to listen to. Headphones. It's horrible. But it's like speech therapists will tell you don't speak to your children in gibberish or in baby talk, right? When you address a child, you talk to them like an adult. Why would you not do that with feelings and emotions, aside from overly aggressive feelings and emotions?
And again, that has a time frame. That non-gibberish talk has a time frame, and it's 1 to 3. You know,
yeah, because their brains are absorbing the most information at that point in time. But
that's the baby talk thing. It stops at around 3 or 4.
Well,
because you're no longer going to talk to your child.
Well, you wouldn't do that because No,
I coochie-cooed my kids.
Till they were what, 10? I don't think so.
No, but I also spoke to them like adults, you know?
Yeah. But I also think that this has to do with when you're upset, again, it's that whole, I don't know how to process emotions. It's not even necessarily, I don't think that you're disappointed in them or in your partner. It's, I've had a bad day, so I'm just going to, be an introvert.
Here's the next caveat to this. What age are the parents? Because... in your 20s, you're like still just discovering what your parents fucked you up with. And until you're in your mid-30s, you're not even realizing the consequences of whatever or the things. I told you, I'm a big advocate of telling my kids, look, you don't understand this now, but one day you're going to go, aha, that's what dad meant. And it happens. But, if you have kids who are having kids, 19 and 20-year-olds having kids, they're going to parent totally different than parents who are in their 30s or 40s.
They are, but it also depends on how they were raised. Like there is such a thing as emotional intelligence. And I think sometimes the older you get, the more you realize that maybe you're not as emotionally intelligent as you once thought that you were. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you can think, okay, if I avoid this or I shut down or I come back to this, at a later time, then I'll probably approach it in a better, more, again, even-keeled manner. But if you don't relay that to the person, whether it's your partner, whether it's a boss, your children, that's a part of emotional intelligence, is telling somebody why you're doing something. I'm not just going silent. I'm not falling off the radar. I'm not ignoring you. I'm trying to process how I feel about this, and I'll come back to it when we can have an adult conversation about it, right? Okay. I mean, I don't know.
I think we're split on the 50-50 on the
yeah, but again, I think that goes back to, you at your point in your life, like, you have come to this place where this is what works for you. And it's just, you can start over, though, with children and teach them better habits. The third one is waking your children up with aggression or loud noises. I fully agree with that. Like, no, you should not wake your children up. Like, fighting, screaming, yelling at each other. Like, that's what they're talking about, is waking them up or coming in a room, kicking down the door.
They're talking about, come on, little Johnny, it's time to get up for school. And I'm like, get the fuck out of bed, Joey. You got to fucking go.
Is that really what you do? So that's how you took that?
Pretty much. I used to wake Nick up with a fucking trumpet.
Why?
Get the fuck out of bed.
That's annoying for everybody.
Get out of bed. Because you got to get out of bed. Because
you think that makes him look forward to getting out of bed? Do you think that was effective?
I mean,
Joey, it got him out of bed, yes.
Joey gets up pretty easy. I mean, and
did you have to play a trumpet for him?
And then you have the kids like Miranda who gets up no problem. She's kind of regimented in her thing, and Joey gets up no problem either. But I'm not walking in and doing the get up. It's time to wake up. Come on, Mr. Sandman left. No. Get out of bed. Let's go. You got school today.
You love to bring up ages. At what age does that start? You're doing that to a 2-year-old?
I can't really say I was doing that to a 2-year-old. Rachel mainly did the waking up when they were younger, so I'm sure she coddled them a little.
Jesus. But, I was thinking that they were discussing, like, don't wake your children up with the fighting and the arguing and whatever, because that is for sure traumatic.
I think it's directed towards them. Don't wake them up with any kind of,
the trumpet, like kicking down the
door.
Get up.
Get up.
Yeah.
You know, that's normal. That's normal. You know, and as they get older, it's more normal because they're staying up later. They're, you know.
I mean, there are alarm clocks.
And I mean, there's other traumatic things you can do, like pull the covers off of them, you know.
Is this what you do this
Water.
all the time? Like, for what? What is the purpose of that? That is traumatic.
The purpose is to get them
How
out
does
of
somebody
bed,
sleep
Kimmy.
properly, though. Like, that might affect
They've
your
clearly
sleeping
slept
patterns.
properly.
No.
I'm not waking them up every
That's
15
horrible.
minutes like
That's
some kind of torture.
horrible.
They slept 8 fucking hours. Drag them out of the fucking bed.
Why are you? Oh, can you use your inside voice too? I'm sitting across from you on a couch. All of this is giving me anxiety.
All right, well, yeah.
Thank God I wasn't
clearly
your
we're
child.
missing that.
Okay, you and I clearly disagree on, but okay. Treating siblings so differently that there's a clear favorite, specifically sons.
Yeah, I think that's a problem. And I can kind of relate to that because my brother's 11 years older than me. He moved out of the house when I was 6, got married, gone, and I grew up with just my mother. So my mother treated us differently, but didn't show it. But later in the years, my brother and I figured out that, hey, we're 2 different people, and she treated us totally different.
You had different relationships with her.
Yes. But I mean, like, Nick and Joey, you gotta, they're same thing. Just 13 years apart.
Yeah.
So, of course, they're going to get treated differently, and Nick kind of gets butthurt sometimes, I think, because
He's the older one.
Yeah, he's the older one because he grew up at a different time.
Yeah, he grew up with trumpets and
he
water.
He grew up with younger parents who, with
no children.
Your parents
no children
are learning.
He grew up with 0 to 1,000, Len.
But he also had a lot of benefits that Joey and Miranda did.
Well, he had all
my
your
mother
time.
was alive, and he used to spend a lot of time at my mother's house. We would just drop him off, and my mom would cater to him, and
But he also had that one-on-one. Like, I'm an only child, so
yeah, no, he had a good period of that.
But I feel like you can even feel that with grandparents, though.
Yes,
right. Like, you can feel who and there's always that joke, like,
yeah.
I'm your favorite. You can hear it. Kids will ask, like, am I your favorite? Like,
yes.
whatever. I think though it's important as a parent to develop individual relationships with each of your kids, right? Like I think that you take the time to try to connect with your children in something that they're passionate about and that you guys can share one-on-one together.
Yes.
You know what I
think
mean?
that's important. I mean, they're all the same. I love them all the same.
Do you really?
No, I do.
But in a different way. I think you love them all the same.
Miranda's my favorite daughter.
She's your only daughter. I love it. I love when parents say that. Or like grandparents, you're my favorite granddaughter. I'm your only granddaughter. What are you talking about?
Do I treat her differently? Yes, because I'm a man and she's my daughter. So I am going to instow different things on my sons than I do on my daughter. So does that make her my favorite? No.
But do you discipline her in a different way than you discipline your sons? Do you talk to her in a different way than you talk to your sons?
Nah, not so much.
Okay.
Not so much. I just try and teach her different things. I teach her the other side of men.
Yeah. On the other side of men.
Like my sons I might high five in some situations and her I might reprimand. So, it's like, but that's natural.
Do you believe that you can love your children the same, but also different? Like, you love them all in different ways, but it's the same amount of love.
Of course. You're going to love your kids different because they're all different.
Yeah.
You can't.
There's not a homogenous.
No. There's no like.
But the clear favorite thing, I think we've all seen that, whether it's a personal experience or in friends.
And kids will play on that too. But, I guess if you had twin boys, it might.
Well, and one is super athletic. If you're the dad that always wanted the star athlete,
correct,
and one is a musician and that's not your jam, and the other one is the quarterback,
you're
going to
connect more with one than the other. And then I could see a kid might feeling that, but it's just something that you have to
be aware of.
Yeah, be aware of and explain to your kids. But you can't help that.
But again, there's a level of emotional intelligence and self-awareness. And I'm not mad at this trauma therapist. Again, if you're just tuning in, this is what we're talking about. There's a trauma therapist that listed out a bunch of things she hopes parents will stop doing to their children, to their partners, to their families, whatever.
I wonder how many kids she has.
This is one of them, right? I'm sure somebody put that in the comments. I haven't gotten too deep into that.
I'm just curious.
This is one I feel like, not you, but it's a saying, I guess I'm just the worst mom then, when your kids share that they're hurt. That passive aggressive, like, oh, I guess I just don't do anything for, and I know parents that do that. My mom was definitely not that one. And this was.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to do. I mean, don't put additional burden on your children that is clearly your insecurity, not theirs.
Well, and again, you have to commend a child who has the self-awareness and the emotional intelligence to come to you and tell you that they're hurt by something. It's we had the podcast where we discussed the Post-it quotes, remember, from like the 9-year-olds. There was another therapist that was sharing just some of the really heartbreaking things that kids were sharing with her during their therapy sessions. And a lot of them were addressing the fact that they don't feel comfortable to tell their parents when they feel like they're being neglected.
There's a fine line there between being the cool parent and the real parent. I think there's a fine line in that, and that's something that you have to learn to walk with your children, because you do have to be their parent and you do have to keep them from harm's way. And necessarily being the cool parent is not always the, you know what I mean?
But I think there are things that you can do. Like if your child comes to you and is like, I wish we spent more time together. I don't feel like we spend a lot of time together. And a parent can feel guilty, right?
Yes.
And then it becomes, oh, well, and they
don't put it back on them.
Yeah, they throw in their face, well, you go to soccer and you go to this and you go to that and I do all of these things for you. I guess I'm just the worst parent in the world and your child is just saying, I wish we had more time together.
Yeah.
Like that's there's going to come a point in time where I would hope as a parent.
Cats in the Cradle.
You would, right? You would want that. That's a song, by the way. Yeah. So Len, you don't do that, and I can appreciate that. Refusing to apologize because you're the parent and therefore don't have to. I feel like this has Lenny written all over it.
Apologize if I'm wrong, not a problem. That statement, the way she has it written there, I mean, telling them to be away, do something, this is the way it's going to be. I don't have to explain myself because I'm a parent.
Yeah.
I totally believe in.
Okay.
Not apologizing if you're clearly wrong. That's not
the move.
No. I mean, you can explain to them, hey, I am a parent and there was a problem and you were right and your parents make mistakes too. Because a lot of kids, they see their parents as perfection. So, it's explaining to them that parents make mistakes too, I think will give them a better outlook when they go forward.
I love that. And again, I think that is the mature, probably most positive interaction you could have for them as adults down the line, because it's teaching them accountability. It's teaching them to acknowledge the fact that, hey, sometimes we lash out. And I think that to me, that sounds kind of like a disciplinary thing. Like if you refuse to apologize, like you said.
I mean, like when someone gets mad at a couch because they walk into it, Yeah. That's like.
Or if you take something out on your child and it had nothing to do with them, you need to be able to come back and say, hey, because guess what? That manifests itself later on down the line in their personal relationships, whether it's with a partner, again, a friend, a coworker. There are times it's something that I have to do frequently. I'm not.
I can't count on one hand how many times you've apologized to me.
Yes, I have. I've apologized to you, Len. Ever, never? And you don't deserve it. I'm just kidding. But no, it's one of those things where it's like, sometimes you react first, and then you think about it later, and you have to come back and be like, that was not meant for you. Like that reaction had nothing to do with you.
Reading that one, just be clear that she's talking about, at least the way she has it written, owning your own shit if you're wrong, which I'm totally an advocate of.
I love that. Oh,
But
Lenny.
I'm also a total advocate.
Well, no, but I understand what you're saying. Like, if there's certain ways that we do things in our house,
Why am I not going to the party?
Yeah.
Because
I
I'm the parent,
said so.
and I said so.
Well, that's what that feels like. That feels very much like because I said so.
Yes.
But I also, do you think that there's a problem with explaining why to a child? Like, I get that at the end of the day, your word is your word as the parent, and what you say goes. I understand you wanting to be effective in that messaging, but if they did something, if their grades are down, or if they didn't handle their chores,
that's a if it's a consequence of their actions, that's one thing. If it's socioeconomic, you might not want to explain that to your kid. I can't take you to Chuck E. Cheese because we're not going because I said so means I can't afford it or something. I don't know. It's situational.
As a parent, though, do you believe that it's better to be forthcoming with information like that because there's a lot of kids.
I think it's age appropriate.
Well,
I think it's age appropriate.
I say it because there's a lot, like, they've done a lot of studies about especially kids who went through the Great Recession, and they were completely blindsided when their home got foreclosed on because their parents.
I mean, you're talking about in the 30s?
No. I'm talking as the Great of 2008.
Oh, that's not the Great Recession. But
yes, it is not.
That was
you're talking about the Great.
recession.
No, you're talking about the Great Depression, my man.
Yeah, you're
this
right.
was called the Great Recession of 2008.
Yes,
just because you made it through it.
Kids were more sheltered.
But they were looking at parents who were living on credit cards. Yes. So they were living a lifestyle, and when all of a sudden that the banking job or whatever happened, or the mortgage balloon payment came due, and all of that kind of
the bubble burst,
they were completely taken aback, and it has fucked a lot of kids up. Like, when we talk about those younger millennials and those older Gen Zs
that I did to my daughter, she had a realization one day that not everybody has a junkyard on the side of their house. Because I used to have cars, when I didn't have a place to put my junk.
Yeah.
My junk was at the house. I had a shipping container. I mean, when we lived over here, I had 3 shipping containers and tents between them with my car stuff. It was like my shop was out on the tennis court.
Yeah.
And she came to that realization when she was like 14 or 15 that not everybody has that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because it was normal for her.
Okay.
It's the same, like you give them.
I'm talking about when you were literally robbing Peter to pay Paul, like in 2008, 2009, when everything was falling out from underneath you. Do you share that with like you brought up an example? If it's socioeconomic,
it's time. It's the timing of your child. It's the age of your child. If they, if a 3-year-old sees this whole thing and by the time they're 6, it changes. That's a different thing than a 9-year-old and going to a 12-year-old. They have a different.
But you know that there are kids that will talk about. There are people grown-ups now that say, I grew up and I went to private school from 6 to 12. My dad had 4 cars, and then all of a sudden, we were living in a tenement and whatever. And that's. But if there's no sort of forewarning to it, if there's no conversation or communication, and all of a sudden life is this, and you think everything is because you're sheltering, because you're trying, as a parent, you're protecting your family, your kids. I just feel like it's one of those things where when we have these conversations, it's an interesting dynamic because
I can't. I went through it with my father. He lost everything when I was, 15. But from the time I was 11, we were going to Worth Avenue every Sunday for lunch. I had a brand new motorcycle that I was riding on the lot we owned in Highland Beach for development. So, and I'm going way back to, late 70s. And he lost it all. I mean, we went from looking at planes to purchase.
Which do you think is more traumatizing, though? Having no clue that that's coming, and having,
I had no clue.
And having, that's what I'm saying. So when we're talking about traumatic things and being open and honest and communicating effectively with kids, I think parents oftentimes do this with a lot. It's like divorce, right? It's like when you put on this great front in front of your kids, and literally you and your partner know behind closed doors, this shit ain't finna last.
Yeah.
But your kids are blindsided. And it can happen when your kids are 25. It can happen when you get divorced and your kids are 30. And they're like, what do you mean? We thought you loved each other this whole time.
It is traumatic no matter what. But how you deal with that as a young adult, as a child, as, you know, it's the coping skills.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do you take this and realize, you know, I had a conversation about, you know, parents and empty nesting, you know, like if a father plays baseball with his kid every, you know, whatever, every Sunday, and then
he goes off to college.
Yeah, high school. And the dad might feel some kind of way, you know, and you have to look at both perspectives.
But I love that you mentioned coping skills because, again, that's something that children learn or don't learn from their parents. So it's kind of like I feel I do like transparency. I realize you don't want to put all of the financial burdens of adulthood on your children, but I think that there are honest conversations that are very beneficial because then their relationship with money is different. Do you know what I'm saying? Like when kids realize that my parents work very hard to give me the things that we have, I know I need to work just as hard or harder in order to elevate beyond that. But I know that I'm good with, I don't know. I think that as we progress through time, you see more of these conversations happening. We discussed the whole, remember, would you charge your kids rent? Remember we had that conversation on this podcast, like one of our first episodes.
Meanwhile, I have a loafer in my house now.
Yeah, I know. You're But no, the comments were wild because you had kids that were, you know, sharing, I don't want to say kids, but you had young adults that were sharing their childhood experiences of being 13 or 14 and having to get a job and having to give all their money to their parents and what that does to your relationship with finances, what that does to your relationship with your mother, you know, or having parents that are telling you, you know, you need to contribute X, Y, Z, and the kids are going like, you brought me into the, you know.
I mean, the people who are successful and came up that way, I think are very, you know, tight with their money. You know, I think they're more apt to be very...
The children that we were just talking about, the Great Recession kids, like they're...
I mean, listen to Grant. Grant talks a lot about that on his...
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm not giving my kids shit.
Yeah.
They got to earn it.
Well, and I'm not mad at...
I'm going to give them the tools.
Well, I mean, and they also... Yeah, and the private jet flights, and they're riding around in Balenciagas, and they are living in, you know, $20 million homes in Golden Beach. So... What he isn't giving them, and he's also giving them a platform because I mean, his one daughter that was in here with us, she's incredible. She's got now 250,000 followers on Instagram, and she does her own motivational speaking for 12-year-olds. It's wild, and I love it. But yeah, so there's, I mean, what you're giving and what you're not are I get it. It's just Bill Gates.
Where you're starting.
Well, no, Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Basically wrote his kids out of his will. Was like, you know, we know he's literally top 3 richest men on the planet, and it's like. There, you know, you're all getting $10 million, which when you're worth $100 billion, he's like, but I've given you I've set you up. They're all CEOs at this point. They're all running Fortune 500s or their own businesses, venture capitalists, whatever. So yeah, I get that.
All right.
I'm just saying when these kids saw the rug pulled out from underneath or had the rug pulled out from underneath them, it's changed how they look at money. Many of them are much more frugal now. They don't believe in credit cards. They're afraid of home ownership to some degree because they don't want to get bamboozled or locked into something.
They're scared.
So
they're scared.
But part of it comes from parents not being transparent. Okay, expecting the whole household to walk on eggshells when you're in a bad mood. I think we kind of touched on that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
are you like that? You have a lot of pressure.
I am very not often in a bad mood.
Do you not? My question to you is: will you not go home? Like, what do you think is a better way? If you know,
yeah, I'll go by the shop and work on the motorcycle.
Well, you will stay out later before.
Yeah,
you
I mean,
kind
if
of
I'm stressed, I don't go home stressed.
Well, I was gonna say, I feel like that's an energy thing. Like I'm aware of that. Again, this has nothing to do with children, but even if I'm in a weird space and I go to see people, I'll tell them I'm in a weird space.
I'm not normal. You know, a 9 to 5.
Trust me, we know.
A 9 to 5 person.
Can you pull that clip, by the way, where Lenny just admitted that he's not normal?
A 9 to 5 person might, you know, not have an outlet after work, which is why you find the happy hour.
Or they have the man cave, or they have, they're in their garage, or they, you know.
I mean, don't poke the bear. It's probably,
Don't poke the bear.
It's probably, if you know your parent comes home and they're off, yeah.
Do you think there's a way to have
relaxing a
that
little.
conversation though that's effective? Like, so if you have
Yeah.
a partner in the house and it's like, hey, daddy had a rough day today. I feel like that.
Or even telling your kids, look, I'm a little stressed right now. I'm going to go take a shower. We'll talk after.
Yeah.
You know.
Again, communication
Yes.
is a beautiful
Yes.
thing. And I also think that you can be a helpful co-parent in that situation. If you have two parents in the house, which unfortunately not everybody does, but if you do, it's kind of like taking a moment to explain, hey, if mommy's a doctor or a lawyer or a judge or a teacher,
Yeah.
she's got a lot on her plate right
They
now.
don't have good coping skills.
Let's go outside. Bro.
Just saying.
We have great conversations, and he just throws a monkey wrench in it like that. Like, they don't have good coping skills. Men are the worst. Again, you guys are no, never mind. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going tit for tat with you. But silent treatment tends to be, or I'm going to go into the man cave and just disappear from the house. You can bring me my dinner in here.
Yeah.
That's more the Al Bundy, whatever. Ugh, you're so frustrating sometimes. Depending on them for emotional support in the way you would with a partner, that just sounds weird
Yes.
to me.
Get a cat.
Not even a cat, but there are people that do that.
Yes.
Like, there are people that put, like, you hear the stories about
That's
the
a
mom
lot.
raising a son, and it's like you're the man of the house, or you're, and leaning on them that way, or crying to them about relationships or
Yes.
whatever that looks like. That's
I mean, you
odd.
see it with very young single parents.
Yeah.
That's a lot of that. A lot of these super young parents want to have babies because they want someone that will love them unconditionally. I
Yeah.
mean, the mother wants love, that she didn't get from her mother. So it's an interesting.
I think that's also where the guilting comes in, especially
Yeah.
as they get older. Like,
Very- that's
you're
a-
just gonna leave me. You're gonna whatever.
That's
Like, I
a-
feel like that can go
yes.
very. This feels very Norman Bates
Yeah.
and his mom. Like, that one to me, I agree with
Keeping
you,
mom in the tub.
Morgan. I agree with you 100% on that one. You should definitely not be depending on your children for emotional support in the way you would
No.
a partner. That's wild.
No.
I don't mind doing that. I think as you get old, like, now it's different as you're an older adult, and if you have parents that were married 50 years and then one of them passes,
Yeah, I mean, if your kids are adults,
yeah, then that's a different
We're not
now,
talking about kids anymore.
no, yeah, now you're having a different conversation. Treating them unfairly because the world isn't fair. One, because this doesn't actually prepare them for anything.
Definition of treating them unfair.
That's just such a ridiculous
Definition of
statement,
treating
though.
them
'Cause
unfair.
I know you believe that one.
I mean, definition of treating them unfair is that's up to interpretation. It's like, I told you the story about Nick where I made him touch that hot light bulb that he left on every night, and he burned his finger. Now, is that child abuse, or is that teaching him never to turn that light on again and know that there's consequences for his actions? I mean, it's just funny. He's calling right now.
His ears are ringing.
It's like, what is it? Give me an example.
I think that there are, again, Lenny, for as much as we disagree, I think that you really are a phenomenal parent. So I think,
Listen,
I think it's difficult for, and again, and my mother was never, I think that there are parents that lord things or do really, they fuck with their kids and then hide behind, well, the world's not fair. Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm a big advocate of, it's a scary fucking world, and I want my kids to be prepared for it.
I understand that. Let me use an example, like my stepdad. I don't actually. I'm not even going to use him, but like, to me, I can picture what she's talking about to some degree. It's like there are parents who do mean-spirited things sometimes, and I'm not talking about physical abuse. I'm talking about like
taking your kid down to the park and dropping them off and hiding from them.
Yeah, that's horrible. But no,
But you know what I'm saying.
Or saying I'm going to take you, and then all of a sudden, just because.
Yes.
Now you're backing out, right? Or it's like the parent who doesn't show up on their weekend, right? And just doesn't give you an example or an explanation, just doesn't do it. And it's like, well, the world, and you're sitting there on some like, well, that's not fair, and they're like, well, the world's not fair.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
there are just sometimes there are spiteful people, and a lot of times I think that does come from however they were raised. I don't think that a parent who was loved
Yeah.
would
I don't
do
know.
that to
Listen,
their
I am
child.
by no means the best parent. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I know everything about parenting, but I do know from my life experience what my kids are going to face in the future, and I want them to be prepared for that.
Yeah, but and again, I can 100% see different situations. It's to me that's a situation where it's like if you needed Miranda to babysit Joey, but like you had told Miranda she could go somewhere, right? And then all of a sudden you just felt like going out.
Yeah.
And she can no longer go to what you had already promised her she could go. And she's like, well, that's not fair. And you're like, well, the world's not fair. And it's like you're kind of being a shitty parent at that point in time. Like, because you could hire
Well,
a babysitter.
the world's not fair.
But no, but to me, though, like now, but you're playing
Yes.
with people's.
Is it something that, because I want to go out or because something
No.
happened,
I'm being very specific,
Yeah.
and you're making a selfish
Yes.
decision,
Yes.
and then just saying, well, the world's not fair. I think
totally
that,
comply
and there's
with
there are unfortunately a lot of people who
Yes.
act that way,
Yes.
but it's because they were treated that way. So I get that. Seeing your children as an extension of you, there's so much more than this.
I think that's like the living vicariously through your children.
Okay, you're taking it to that.
That's what I would see it as.
Well, no, because I think that I would take pride. I'm not mad at a parent who feels their child is an extension of them, right? Yeah. Now, when you push your dreams on your child or your expectations or the places where you fell short in life or the things that you felt were taken away from you.
I'm a carpenter, you're going to be a carpenter, period.
Or I wanted to be a musician and you have a bit of a gift, so I'm going to push you in this space because it was what I wanted, whether you want that or not.
Yes.
Like, so I get
again, timing in the child's life. I mean, you see it sometimes with football kids. They're not really, I mean, they played football their whole life, but when they're in high school, they're not necessarily, they don't have the heart anymore.
Well, yeah, it's not.
They're
good, but like it's
they're running on muscle memory.
But they're doing it for you.
Yes, they're doing it.
They're doing it because you want them to do it. They're doing it because they know that it would disappoint you or let you down.
To the other side of that, the parent could also be pushing them to make them complete something to make them, hey, you.
But there's also a level of, again,
I've done it with Joey, but only on a commitment basis.
Well, and I'm not, and again, I'm not mad at that because that's a skill that carries over into adulthood. If you let your kids throw in the towel every time they get to a place that's difficult or challenging,
I have none of that.
They will continue to do that, right? Yes. They will continue to rest on their natural ability and never push themselves beyond that, which means you never maximize your full potential. And especially if you, as a parent, have invested money and time into something, it's like if your kid grows up playing the piano, right? And this is something that they do, or like you said, if it's a sport, you're always going to get to a place where you hit a brick wall. That's a part of life. It happens in everybody's career trajectory. It happens in relationships. Every part of life. If you don't learn to push through that, and that's usually the difference between the people who make it and who don't, really and truthfully, because I know that I've been
Let your kid quit when it gets difficult, and you're going to have a quitter.
Yeah. I mean, because I've gone to that place and
it's okay, honey.
My career. Well, but I think sometimes there's a level of fresh, and I think for a lot of parents, though, when things cost money, you end up in that space in your head where you're like, well, fuck it. If they don't want to do it, why am I shelling out? $300 a week for a private coach or for batting practice or for whatever. Fine. Don't do it anymore. You know what I mean? Especially if you're in a financially, tight situation where that $300 could go somewhere else. But it's unfortunate because a lot of times it's just because they're either not excelling or they just hit that teenage space where you're just being lazy.
Yeah.
But I also think that you can do it. I've seen it with friends where the extension is a different thing. It's about I have a position in this community and you are a reflection of that.
Yes.
So it could be in how you carry yourself when you're out. Yeah. It could be, kids make mistakes And sometimes there can be a lot of pressure associated with who your parents are.
Yeah. I mean, there was a whole documentary about the Rockefeller grandchildren and
Yeah.
stuff, and they can't fucking leave their house because they're fucking emotionally scarred.
That family was wild. Okay. Believing they should be grateful because you feed and house them. She said, this is your job as a parent.
Yeah, I do believe it's your job as a parent.
Agreed.
But grateful and participating in the household, it's my job to take care of my kids. It's their job to go to school and to get good grades. And I really feel that way, that, look, I'm doing my part, you do your part. It's a harmonious thing. But that, it's making them feel guilty. No.
But again, there are plenty. We've seen it.
At 18?
We've seen it in the comments. Stop it. You're not kicking
wait,
nobody out your house at
let
18.
Let me finish. At 18 years old, when they decide to flex, and every fucking one of them does, I'm an adult now. Ooh. Okay, motherfucker, there's your suitcase. There's the door. Enjoy being an adult. You stay here. There's rules, and they're my rules, and you follow them. Otherwise, go be an adult.
But what are the rules? And the rules change at 18, do they not?
Do they change?
Do they have a curfew at 18?
I don't know necessarily that they have a curfew, but,
I mean, there's respect when you come into the house.
There's all kinds,
cleaning
there's
up after
all
yourself.
kinds of things that go with the 18-year-old thing, but
that's not what she's... Again, we've seen examples of this in the comment section of many of our posts with children who had parents who, in a fit of rage or just in a moment of disappointment will, I sacrificed everything for you. I kept roof over your head. I kept a roof over your head. I kept food on your... And it's like, you're my parent. Like, what are you talking about? Oh, thank you for giving me the bare necessities of life.
There's still a lot of parents that believe my job ends when you're 18. There's a lot of that, and I'm not a hater of that. I'm not a hater of that. Look, I took care of you, I clothed you, I fed you, I taught you, what I could. Here you go, son. It's your world.
But I also think if you raise your children to be responsible adults, even if they stay in your home, they're going to want to contribute in some way, shape, or form. Again, it all comes full circle, right? If you have ungrateful children, I'm not always going to place the blame because every once in a while, you have great parents that just get a rotten egg, or vice versa. You have a great kid that just had the shittiest parents ever, right? I mean, it happens that way sometimes. But I think more often than not, everybody hits bumps along the way. To your point, parents are going to mess up, kids are going to mess up. It's about the communication there, and you can say things like, obviously, you never went without. Like, I have to acknowledge that about my mother on a daily basis, the things that you realize as you get older, where they sacrificed on their end so that you could have and so that you could do, where they made priorities, you know what I mean? But I don't know that you ever get to that point if you don't have respect and communication and a relationship with a parent, aside from seeing other people's relationships and going, oh, wow, I'm so glad that wasn't how I was raised. But
but you could also go the opposite with that. I wish I was raised like that. There's
well, no. There are for sure. No, that's what I'm saying. There are for sure people. Again, I feel absolutely blessed that I had the mom that I had the family that I had, even my dad, who I don't have the best relationship with. Like, I have good memories of him, right? Like, I mean, and I am very much my father's daughter, but that's been a long journey to get to that place and
Who
to
told
come.
You that, your mom?
What?
That's one of the things.
Oh yeah, no, but like no,
You're just like your father.
No, but I mean, I have facial expressions that are 100% my dad, and my mom absolutely never spoke an ill word about my dad ever. And as an adult, I can honestly say she could have. Other people in my family did.
Well,
other people in my family did, but she absolutely
outsiders don't matter as much.
Using the argument someone's got to teach them or they need to learn as a way to justify your abuse and misplaced rage. Well, that one is self-explanatory.
Yeah,
I'm not mad at this. Someone's got to. I'm.
I don't believe you should abuse your kid.
Well, no, like you said, you did the light thing,
Yeah.
but that's not. I don't think misplaced rage.
No.
That's your like. It's the kid burning the stove. Like,
Yeah.
eventually, if every time he wants to crawl up on the counter while you're cooking and he puts his hand there, you can slap it so many times, but eventually, the minute he touches the thing, he's gonna realize, oh, that's what she meant when she said it's hot.
Yeah. It's, sometimes kids have to learn by experience. No matter how many times a parent tells them not to do something.
I stuck a key in a light socket. Never did that again.
They have to learn by experience.
Like,
you don't have to set them up for it.
No.
But they have to learn by experience.
But it's one of those things, you can child-proof a house, right? But if your kid goes out somewhere else and it's not, and that's exactly what happened to me. I was at the airport. I was a little airport rugrat, and I stuck a key in a light sign. I was like, oh, well, look at that. I promise you, I never did it again. So, yes, there are things that sometimes you just have to learn by experience. You got to let the bike go. And when they crash it into a tree, that's not abuse. It's learning how to ride a bike, right?
Yes.
But if you're intentionally...
Some parents would, consider that abuse.
Yeah, well...
Training wheels till they're 10. Breastfeeding till they're 8.
But also, there are the parents that do abuse and misplace,
No, that's
deflect
absolute.
and all of that. Weaponizing the other parent against them, that's what you were talking. Weaponizing the other, you're acting just like your father.
Yeah.
That's whack.
Yeah.
It's whack.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. I don't think we, Rachel or I, have ever done that, so.
Well, no, and I think that's something that you can have the conversation about later in life. Like, children are very perceptive. They're very astute.
Yes.
If a parent has flaws, they will see them
Yeah.
all on their own, and they will figure that out. You telling your child that they're flawed because they're acting like their flawed parent is just, it's a double whammy. You know what I mean? And it creates resentment across the board. But again, it's one of those things that many.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times it's going to backfire, because if that child truly is like that parent, they're going to end up either gravitating towards them and away from the other one.
You know what's wild, though? Like, Len, I can't...
Or vice versa.
Disagree with you, though, as far as... This really does feel like a female-centered comment. I don't know too many dudes that are like, you're acting like your mom.
Yeah.
I don't know too many men that throw that out there as a means of, like, disrespect. Like, they don't use that as a weapon. I feel like that is really a female-centric kind of...
I'll give you that one.
...trait. Sorry, ladies. I'm keeping it 100. I'm trying to think in my head, like... Again,
I think it could still be the same. I mean, it depends if you're talking to your daughter or your son. I mean,
but
there could be instances where you'd say that.
I have, I don't know.
Honey, wash the dishes. You're acting like your mother.
I've still never. I can't think of an instance where I've actually seen a man. Actually, let me take that back. My grandfather was wild.
Next question.
Yeah, using shame to manipulate them into behaving how you think that they should. No boy's ever going to want you if you blank.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's like,
That's just...
Burp in public.
No, but that's... Nobody's ever going to want you if you... Like, as a man, if you don't... Well,
first of all, clearly it's not a man writing that question, because... There ain't no reason a man wouldn't want a woman that's attractive or nice or whatever, but,
Mm-hmm. Again,
Like, if you're trying to teach your daughter manners...
I can't even imagine a parent, but, like, what parent says that to you? That's just weird to me. Like,
it's, again, context. It's got to be context, because...
But it also feels very 1940s, like 1950s, 1960s to me. Like, that's your purpose on this earth.
No man is ever going to want you if you eat with your fingers.
Like, but again, again, it feels very use that as your rationalization for why somebody shouldn't behave in a certain way.
Again,
is because you're not going to get a partner. It just feels very antiquated.
You would have to think a lot of these questions come from her personal experiences,
Well, no, but
either herself or
the
with
wild
clients.
thing is, the very first comment that I see is, dang, I can check off almost every single one of these from my childhood. Do I win a prize? In all seriousness, I'm so thankful for the gift of consciousness so I can choose differently for my precious, innocent children. Sharing your child's secret in order to get a laugh at a family gathering is way too specific. Damn, that's triggering for me. Like, there's over 1,000 comments on this post, and a majority of them are people who can relate
to something. Everybody can relate to something on that list. How you do it, but that is a perfect example. That comment you just said is a perfect example of maturing and understanding where that was coming from, whether it was good or bad.
Yeah.
I mean, parents are learning till they die.
Yeah. I mean,
everyone is. So,
we are as people, for sure. But it's also important just to foster that awareness, like that you're constantly going to be growing, you're constantly going to be evolving. Yes, you may look back and go, why did you do that? Or you're going to be grateful that I did something. Somebody commented, emotionally immature parents were raised by emotionally unavailable or unaware parents. Most of them waded through the same abuse and no one told them it was abuse or a cycle for them to break. Our generation loves to blame our parents without having any compassion for the hurting child inside of them that needs healing too. I can relate to a lot of these, and I know if I told my parents that it would make them feel terrible. As millennials, we are breaking cycles, but we are also teaching our own parents things they never got to learn. It doesn't have to be us cutting them off or pointing our finger. It can be a healing experience for everyone. Maybe the parents who caused the trauma could acknowledge it and want to learn. It's not a child's job to teach their parent, nor should the onus be on the child to repair or maintain a relationship that harmed them for years. Like, that's heartbreaking to me.
It is, except, what in today's day and age and today's internet and this and that, everything is considered trauma. Okay? Everything. No. So if you're going to consider everything trauma, I guarantee you can find a parent. You didn't come to my one school meeting. My one parent-teacher conference you didn't come to. It's traumatized me for life. Wake the fuck up. That's what it's coming to.
Yeah.
And it can't be that. It has to be more of, okay, this is what my parents gave me. Now I can think about it and do better or do what
100%.
I want to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That consciousness, you can't blame your parents for the way they are. They're the way they are because of the parents before them and generations.
But that's where they talk about breaking cycles, right? That's where they talk about being able to have. But again, the whole
it's not trauma, it's education.
Well, I mean, in some situations, I'm sure there are very traumatic experiences.
If you go to abuse, you go to those things. Those are going to leave trauma. PTSD events, fine.
Yeah. But it's like...
Dad not showing up for your fucking parent-teacher conference, not trauma. Your mom coming home in a bad mood and fucking lashing out every once in a while, not trauma. Okay? That's life. That's normal. And the sooner you realize that and you say, listen, I'm never going to yell when I come home. Fine, great. Now we've taught you something. As a parent,
okay, don't take
and you're changing the cycle.
But that's part of the conversation. Though. Oh, you should be grateful I taught you that, or you could acknowledge, like, okay, like
I was a dick. Sorry.
Yeah, but it's not I taught you, but I made you better.
Kids
now you
know I'm an asshole.
But you want credit, like so that ends up being the gaslighting that a lot of people
as soon as they become of age to really understand that their dad was an asshole, I clearly made it the way it is, and now just take that into consideration when you're deciding what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, it says, somebody else commented, I'm sure the parents who caused the trauma, in quotes, didn't intentionally cause the trauma, is what I'm saying. There are parents who are outright mean and barbaric to their kids. I'm not talking about those parents. I'm talking about parents who did their best with what they had good intentions, and tried their best. I think there's a large percentage of people who are actually parents that understand this, and it's harder for millennial children that are parents to understand. There's a big trend in blaming our parents for everything without understanding what it's like to be a parent or having compassion for their trauma, hurts, acknowledgement that maybe they didn't mean to cause in the first place. But again, like that's that I had that revelation with my dad. I remember there came a point where I didn't want to speak to him. I was upset. He had a whole separate family, in the sense of not when he was married to my mom, but he ended up, I have a half brother and a half sister. He remarried. And I was, sad that they spent they got every day with him and birthdays and Christmases and all of these things. And then I remember having a conversation with my sister, and I was like, he was the same dad to her that he was to me, and they lived in the same house.
Yeah, well, there's something I just thought of, which is very interesting, is only children versus sibling children versus, and how many children someone actually has, because it goes to that whole treating your kids the same, right? So you start out as a mom, young 20s, mid 20s, you have a baby. Nowadays, that baby is coddled, held, kept from everything dangerous, protected. Second child, you're a little more lenient because you've now had some experience with the child. They're a little more resilient. If they fall off the counter, they're going to live, blah, 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 blah. Third child, you're like, I don't give a fuck. Do whatever you want to do. And that right there is treating those three children differently. They all got a different perspective of mom. So the oldest one, who's the firstborn, was the coddled, protected, helicopter mommed kid, and the second one is less helicoptered and less, because now you have some experience, and then the third one, you've already had the experience of these two, and they're fine. So fuck, let him do whatever he wants.
Down the Pampers commercial.
But that's really.
But that wasn't what I was talking about. I was talking about more my dad.
No, I know. I brought that up because it was something that was early on in this thing about treating the kids differently. And they're all three going to have a different perspective always.
But you're a different person to some degree, because with time comes wisdom, and with experience comes wisdom. My dad, my point in what I was saying about him was he was the same parent to me that he was to the two kids that lived in the house with him, because that was all he had. That's going back to the comments. You make do with what you have. A lot of times you are learned creatures. His dad died when he was 7. His mother remarried an Air Force colonel. They had a very different upbringing than what he had, for the first 8 years of his life in a very Italian family where everybody was there, and it was, a lot. He didn't understand the relationship that my mom had with her mother. It was a very, I love you and our family is close. So that's what he gives. So if you can look at your parent through that lens and go, he gave what he had, and it wasn't about favorites, or it wasn't about, oh, they had more time with him. You can have a presence. It doesn't mean you got more time. You can be in the same room. It doesn't mean
you're getting quality time.
Present. And again, I'm not trying to shit on my dad. I'm just saying, like, when I could finally process it that way, I was able to let go of so much, hurt and animosity, and that's time. Whether you realize you're holding on to it or not, you usually are, right? And now when we're together, like, we have a relationship that he will never have with them, because I am, again, so much more his daughter, and that's not a flex. It's just we have the same sense of humor. So I enjoyed the small amounts of time that I spent with him in a different way now, and I don't hold resentment or animosity. And my mother did an incredible job. So, like, I can look back, I could sit here and cry and talk about the trauma of growing up in a single family household, and I only had a mom and everything else. I lacked for nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And then on top of that,
way.
you can see healthy relationships. I mean, I think the most important, honestly, part of a parental unit is for your children down the line learning how to communicate with a partner, right? Like, that's a lot of times what you learn. So it's important that those relationships are healthy relationships. So I don't really want two parents to stay together if they're miserable and angry and screaming at each other all the time, because that ends up being what you feel
perpetuates, yes,
is normal. So if you can co-parent in a positive manner and respect one another, and then you have healthy, flourishing relationships outside of that, then I think that's more beneficial to your kids, as well. But you can look at your childhood and blame it for everything that's not going right in your life as an adult and say it's the trauma. But at the end of the day, you have accountability. You have to self-reflect.
Or you can look at your childhood and go, that shit was fucked up, but, this is what I'm going to do with it.
People don't.
These experiences are, everybody has life experiences that change their trajectory. It's when you become aware that those things were the way they were, and you don't have to have them that way. You don't have it's all of how you look at things. You're either
But but it's also about accountability, Len. Like, as an adult, to your point, you're now self-aware. You know these things hurt you. If you continue to put yourself in adult relationships that perpetuate that cycle,
yes,
right? You
course.
have to, at some point in time, stop down and go, what is the common denominator here, right?
Yes.
And when it's you, yeah, you can be mad at your parents for not showing you a healthier,
or you can man the fuck up and
go, okay.
do whatever you want to do.
And that to me is that's the frustrating part that I get to with a lot of this. It's like, I'm reading, when they decide to take accountability and stop playing the victim for the abuse they laid on innocent children they chose to bring into the world, then I'll have compassion and work with them. Until then, they can choke on their empty promises and narcissistic bullshit. Some parents don't expect they're wrong to begin with. These parents will never fix themselves. Like, that makes me so sad to
Listen, there's plenty of parents. There's plenty of people that aren't going to change their ways. That doesn't mean you don't.
No, I'm talking about the person that is rolling through life like that. That's a child. Not a child. It's probably a young adult. I don't know. I don't want to click on their profile. The hurt and the harm and the negativity that they are walking through life with, right? Because they don't want to just see their parent for who they are, right? Whether you get, it's like that saying, waiting for the apology is actually just holding yourself hostage, right? Like, people talk about closure and all of these things.
If you had two parents, you're winning. If you weren't abused physically, I can't say emotionally because everybody's got their own feeling about emotionally, but if you weren't abused traumatically, physically, and you had two parents, you're fucking winning. Even if you had one parent that just loved you and worked hard for you, you're fucking winning. No matter how screwed up they made you feel, they were there for you. If you have a parent that was there for you, you're fucking winning. There's a lot of kids in this world that don't have shit. Okay?
Yeah.
So why don't you start looking at the people who don't have what your little tender ass had and, figure out that you were on the winning side and take what your parents had and change it. Change it.
I don't know. I think for me, it's such a hard lens to look through because I can go back to my childhood.
You don't win ever until you step outside of yourself. If you're looking at everything through your eyes, you will never understand anything else.
Well, no. I'm looking at these people, but I'm sitting here and I'm just grateful. Like, again, there are things that if I were to share with people, they'd be like, oh my God, that's so traumatic.
Yes.
How did you make it through that? And I'm like, because I can look at the people who, to your point, are in foster care, who have bounced from home to home, the 10-year-olds who are couch surfing on relatives, sofas or living with coaches, to the people who lose parents at a young age and, have to grow up without a maternal or a paternal influence in their life. Like, my family is dysfunctional. It's fucking, I wouldn't change it for anything in the world, because if you can, like you said, if you can stop down and extract the love from the situation and then learn from the negatives or the things that you would have done better or different.
Take the positive.
You're a better,
you know what I'm
saying? You're a better human being. It's like my grandfather, I talk about him all the time. He was an asshole. Like, I remember I used to work in my family's store. We had liquor stores. And I walked in one time and
you ever mentioned that before? I don't think I know that.
He literally said...
It's like 47 episodes.
No, he literally said, and this is somebody's very first episode, you dick.
I'm just teasing.
Like, and you mentioned...
I love the story.
Nick, oh, no. What story is it? When he called me a fucking bitch?
No.
That's the story. It's like, he literally walked in and said, what is this fucking bitch doing here? To his 12-year-old granddaughter. Like, said it loud enough so I could hear. Like, not a nice thing to say to a 12-year-old. Could be considered traumatic.
Was he mad at your mom?
He was mad at everybody. He was an asshole. But... like, he was an asshole that had been through his own shit, and he had a terrible relationship with his father, and you know what I mean? And my grandmother eventually left his ass, so he was bitter about that, and you know what I mean? But like, his whole family worked for him in a business that he built up and then allowed them to take to a whole other level. Like, there was a lot, but at the end of the day, I guarantee you, and if my family watches this, they'll be like, no, he didn't. No, he loved them
Yeah.
in his own fucked
course.
up, dysfunctional, crazy way. He loved. Do you think that
Listen.
he showed up at my graduations? He always you know what I'm saying? So he said a
Yes.
horrible thing to me that I overheard. He drank sometimes. You know what I'm saying? He was never physically abusive, but he wasn't. He could what the fuck a person like it was an art form. He could curse for 60 seconds straight and never repeat the same curse word. Cox. All of it. And I was just like, wow, that's amazing. But his customers loved him. There's not a person in our town, our city that would say a bad word about Dick Cardoza. Like, not one. And his family members are like, oh, like, we giggle, like, okay. But at the end of the day, it's like, he's gone. And I choose to remember him teaching me how to drive a boat. You know what I mean? Him being at the things that he did show up for.
The things that you know, if you can't remember the good things about what your parents did in your childhood, I feel bad for you, because if, like I said, if you had a parent that was there the whole time, you had two parents that were there the whole time, you were winning. They had to love you. If they took care of you, they had to love you. Their way of love might be something, but you need to look and see what it was.
Well, and to that point, all like my mother, my aunt, and my uncle all grew up with this man as their father, right? My grandmother left, I think, when my mom was like 13, so my aunt was probably 11, my uncle was probably 9. The man would call drunk and just curse them out, and they would pass the phone around. Like, okay, who's going to deal with him tonight? Who's going to deal with him tonight? They are all incredible parents, though. Do you know what I'm saying? They all are the most loving, encouraging, supportive. You know, do we all have our moment? Like, my grandfather was the king of the silent treatment. He was that guy. My mother and my grandfather worked together every single day. They got in a fight. He called my grandmother a whore. My mother walked out, went for a walk around, you know, the proverbial block, came back. They didn't speak to each other for a year. For a year. They would see each other every day. They worked in a business, and she would just, you know what I'm saying? But she didn't let it eat away at her. And this is as an adult. This is a whole grown-ass 70-year-old man and a whole 40-plus-year-old woman, right? But she was like, I'm going to give him, you know, this is who he is. This is how he operates. And then apparently I think my aunt and my mother both got him the same card for Father's Day. Like, my aunt lived here. We lived in Massachusetts. And he came and showed it, and he was like, I guess this is who I am, right? Because it was, you know, there were words inside of it and whatever.
Yeah.
So both of his daughters, it's kind of funny that you would both get the same card without having had that conversation. Yeah. And he would just act like nothing happened after that, right? Like, so
that's a man thing too.
I get it, but so we're talking about the silent treatment, and again, it's one of those things where fast forward, I can see how this could have had these negative effects and implications on all of these people, but they're all amazing parents. My grandmother was amazing, and even she had her own situations, you know? So again, to Lenny's point, if you can take the good from a situation, because we could keep going. She's got a lot.
Nah, we can't. Forget that list.
No, I mean, it's
She's
to your
a fucking
point.
crack.
Well, she's not a crack, because there were a lot of things that you agreed with.
I mean, yes, there is points, but you have to have, you know.
But my thing is that at the end of the day, it's accountability. Like, and if you want to, you know, don't just hold it in. Address it with your parents. If they don't accept it, then that's on them. You can't carry that burden as a now young adult or as a grown adult or as a parent yourself. If there's things that you wish had been done differently in your childhood, do them differently with your kids. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, but again, if you're failing at relationships in your life, or if you're failing in places, you can't just blame all of that on your parents, you know, and the trauma that they inflicted on you. And even if it is based on that, because I'm not saying that doesn't happen, work on yourself. Go to therapy, address it, acknowledge it, and do whatever you need to do to move forward and be better.
Yes.
Because of it, right? Like the trauma thing and the blame, I agree with the person in those comments talking about that. We love to blame. We love to point a finger at everybody else and why I'm failing because of this, and I'm not where I should be because of that, and I'm not here. That's the bullshit that I'm not here for, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with you.
Yep.
Right?
All right.
Yeah.
Well, this was a great episode.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Did you?
I did.
I love it. I wonder if your kids are going to enjoy it.
Oh, they're gonna.
Nick, we love
hate
you.
me.
Nick's girlfriend listens to the
They're
podcast,
gonna
so
fucking hate me. Now they're all listening to it. I got reamed out for something I said
no.
a month ago or two.
Oh, can we have them on? I wish
They're
they
all
would
in.
just come on. That'd be the
Miranda
best part
said
ever.
she'd come on.
I would love to have Miranda on.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Did she listen to the episode where we talked about
Yes.
the phone?
Yes.
Is that
she
what it
listens to everything. She gets the feed in the clip, I think, with her only the ones with her name.
Oh.
You know, she gets it.
Probably. Oh, I love it. All right. Well, listen, I'm sure a lot of you have a lot to say. We'll post those slides up. And maybe even some of the comments, but feel free to weigh in your thoughts on this. If you had a traumatic childhood and would like to share why we're crazy for not agreeing more with this woman, we're here for that too. Remember, like, subscribe, share, and follow. We are absolutely any and everywhere. And make sure you sign up to get our YouTube shorts.
Yeah.
Right. And then
Absolutely.
obviously our TikTok is usually a lot of fun, and Instagram's been popping lately too.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right. We'll see you next time.
Peace.